If you've watched The Boys, you've probably wondered, is it possible to kill Homelander? And if so, how? In this video, I'll try to answer that question using elements from the series and a bit of speculation. Let me know in the comments if you agree or if you have any other ideas. Number 1. Eliminating Compound V. Obviously, the number 1 method likely resides in Soldier Boy's mysterious cannon, capable of nullifying the powers of soups. In the series, it's mentioned that its operating principle lies in removing the compound from the victim's body. In fact, Kimiko is able to regain her powers by injecting herself with V again.
Since no drug lasts forever and eventually every cell in a body is replaced, the compound should gradually dilute in a soup's body through normal skin exfoliation or simply over time. And we have proof that this happens in soups too, since they can regenerate, heal, and grow hair and nails.
It's likely that Compound V can somehow reproduce within a soup's body. Since there's no mention of a genetically modified bacterium or virus, it's probable that the compound is an inert substance and not a living thing. The other closest thing in nature with these characteristics are prions, proteins capable of altering other proteins, reproducing in the affected body without the need to be alive themselves. Prions modify other proteins in the body and can self-sustain over time. An example of a prion disease is the mad cow disease. Soldier Boy's cannon could work through highly concentrated electromagnetic radiation that, at a specific frequency, can restore the normal structure of proteins modified by Compound V, nullifying its effects in a similar way as vitamin D is modified by UV rays in our skin, and this alteration changes its functioning. Therefore, we could try using samples of V, to which the CIA and the boys have access, to do some testing until it's possible to find the right combination of intensity and frequency capable of replicating the cannon's effects from Soldier Boy's chest, nullifying Compound V's effects in Homelander and eventually killing the bastard.
Number 2. Super willpower. It is shown throughout the series that almost nothing can harm Homelander, not even a subway tunnel collapsing on him. However, when Maeve hits him with a single metal tube during their final fight, she manages to puncture his eardrum, making him bleed. Similarly, Homelander's thermal vision doesn't seem to be able to damage Maeve's bracelet when he strikes it, nor a costume is damaged after destroying a van. This happens with various other objects as well, such as Soldier Boy's shield. How can these objects made of seemingly common non-super materials be so resistant? Let's focus on the metal tube that injured Homelander. The metal, even if moved by Maeve's unstoppable force, should have bent, or at the very least transferred its kinetic energy onto Homelander. Instead, it manages to penetrate his body, which makes no sense, since he is bulletproof. No matter how much force is applied, it's not possible to cut a rock with a sheet of paper. The sheet would simply bend or tear. It is possible, then, that the eardrum is a weak point for Homelander, maybe. A membrane that needs to vibrate to perceive very weak sounds cannot be harder than steel. But at the same time, Homelander is also slightly injured following the first scuffle with Soldier Boy, Butcher and Huey. The problem, then, seems to be about soups and not eardrums. It is possible that soups have some kind of a super willpower that allows them to transfer some of their powers to objects they come into contact with, perhaps through the oils in their skin or the static electricity of their bodies. Otherwise, how can we explain the tube? Now, through his powers, Huey is able to teleport Annie and other people, even though he's unable to teleport their clothes. But he may just be inexperienced. Soups learn to master their powers with time, as we've seen on different occasions, and their willpower seems to play an important role in this. Using this principle, it should be possible to use the combined super willpowers of Starlight and Kimiko, and maybe Frenchie, MM, and some CIA ally with access to temporary V, to ambush Homelander and attempt to simultaneously fatally pierce him.
Number 3. Fighting fire with fire. We have seen that soups are vulnerable to certain issues such as allergies in the case of Noir, heart attacks in the case of A-Train, weight gain, or mental conditions like depression and addiction. This means that what originates from the superhero's body cannot be resolved using superpowers. If the immune system reacts disproportionately, causing an anaphylactic shock, the subject, no matter how powerful, dies. If the heart gives in and circulation stops, the same outcome occurs. And since even Huey's punch, who doesn't even have super strength, is capable of moving A-Train and even Homelander's face on a hit, there doesn't really seem to be a true minimum amount of force required to have an effect on other soups. This suggests that what is produced by a superhero's body could be exploited against other superheroes. For example, you could obtain hydrochloric acid from the Soldier Boy's vomit that, since coming from his body, should be mixed with Compound V and then capable of attacking the skin of other superheroes, even those otherwise invulnerable. After all, if Huey's skin can do what a bullet can't just because it contains V, the same principle should apply to acid as well. So with a sufficient quantity and concentration, it should be possible to dissolve Homelander's entire body. And there's another possibility. Since we clearly see that there's a soup whose entire job is to carve his limbs and have them be replaced by new ones, we should be able to use this ability for the production of bullets and weapons made of or covered with the superhero's skin and bones. Let's also not forget that tissues like skin and muscle can be grown in a lab, which then can be used to craft the ultimate weapon. Number 4. The nuclear option. Supes, as both Black Noir and A-Train confirm, still need a functioning circulatory system to stay alive. While blood cells and all the molecules present can withstand almost anything, certainly Compound V cannot modify the most elementary, necessary and basic molecule of all, water. Targeting this molecule and removing it can be an attack strategy. But how to achieve this? Extreme temperatures are needed to freeze or evaporate liquid water from Homelander's body. But it's not that simple. The series and the spin-off clearly show some superheroes can reach both high and low temperatures. Since heat cannot be created or destroyed, according to the first principle of thermodynamics, if a soup wants to make its external temperature extremely cold or hot, the core part of the body, or the surroundings, must change temperature in the opposite way.
By finely regulating the solutes, pressure, and volume of the blood, it's possible to keep the water in the brain, the heart, and even the main blood vessels at a liquid state for a short period of time. Water cannot evaporate if it has no space to expand, and pressure can change its boiling point.
But what about soups whose main power doesn't concern a temperature change? Like Homelander. We see him survive a strike from Butcher's heat vision and the minus 40 degrees Celsius of the outside of an airplane. But what about extremely high temperatures, such as those achieved with a thermonuclear explosion? The atomic bonds between oxygen and hydrogen in his body and blood would break apart, and even assuming that any other components of Homelander's body are entirely invulnerable to radioactivity, shockwaves, and temperature, the water in the serum and cell cytoplasm would turn into plasma, rendering all vital processes impossible simultaneously, including neuronal transmission and heart nourishment, even with the most possibly efficient heat dispersion method. Number 5. Wait, haven't they already tried a nuke? In the comics, it said that a nuke would obviously kill Homelander, though in the series it's specified by Stilwell that they tried any weapon on Earth, and none of them could harm him. So which is real? Has someone already tried nuking him? Should we assume that she was talking about conventional weapons and not WMDs? Homelander usually operates on US soil, and a nuclear attack there would cause an issue, to say the least, and would have been at least mentioned in the plot. And a nuclear explosion directed against Homelander somewhere abroad is also unlikely. He had no reason to go to a remote location in which a foreign power would be conducting a nuclear test, which in our timeline does not occur anymore, with the only exception being North Korea, and an international use of such weapon against Homelander by some other country would be considered an act of war, which definitely would have been mentioned during the Vought campaign to enlist soups in the army. Plus, if Homelander was ever actually hit by a nuke, he would have a radioactive body like Little Soldier does after the Russian experiments. He should have endured a long quarantine to not endanger every person he interacted with after the incident, another thing that would have been mentioned if it had ever happened, considering Homelander's hateful rules and orders directed at him. And in any case, not all nukes have the same power. The one delivered on Hiroshima was 2,000 times less powerful than the strongest one ever tested, the Tsar Bomba. This device wasn't even tested at its full potential due to concerns about safety, and it still caused damages hundreds of miles away. A full-power, 3-stage thermonuclear bomb would be 8,000 times stronger than the one dropped in Hiroshima. And although this bomb is only owned by Russia, it would certainly be in their best interest to try and eliminate Homelander, even if, as we said, it could be seen as an act of war. Number 6. Ryan. After Ryan realizes that Stormfront and Homelander are evil and that his mother died because of them, he flees with Butcher and Mallory, saying he suffers from recurring nightmares in which Homelander kills him. He is literally terrified, yet as soon as he sees him again, he calls him Dad and asks him to leave together, despite Butcher saving his life. It's possible that Ryan is just a child and changes his mind and mood easily, also because, let's face it, getting along with Butcher is not easy, but who knows? This seemingly anomalous behavior could be part of his personal plan to counter Homelander. Ryan, despite being a child, managed to concentrate all of his hatred to completely incinerate Stormfront. If Ryan used the hatred and fear that arise from his nightmares, he could produce a laser beam capable of hurting or killing Homelander, especially if he enhanced his abilities by injecting himself with V, as A-Train did to win races. A drugged and focused Ryan could approach Homelander while he sleeps and easily kill him. Number 7. The animal option. During the boys' trip to Russia, a hamster under the effects of V is shown, demonstrating that it can react not only on humans, but also on animals. While it would be dangerous and challenging to handle, an idea could be to inject Compound V into snakes, scorpions, or even better, cube jellyfish or stonefish to extract their deadly venom made super heroic by Compound V. The sting of a cube jellyfish with superpowers, especially if its venom could be extracted and concentrated, should bypass Homelander's super resistance, allowing him to be killed instantly. Number 8. Lost in Space. This is a very risky plan, but I've decided to include it. Homelander could be challenged or motivated somehow into flying into open space. For example, he can be tricked into believing that there's an asteroid on a collision course with Earth that can only be stopped by him. or he could be told that Soldier Boy is in an artificial satellite orbiting far from Earth. If that point is sufficiently distant, and if Homelander falls for it, he might not be able to return. Even assuming that his body can generate propulsion in the absence of gravity or matter, and that he can survive without oxygen and the extremely low temperatures of open space, he would still be unable to orient himself once Earth is out of sight. For example, if he traveled to Jupiter, from there, Earth would appear so small as to be indistinguishable from the vast amount of stars and darkness all around. Human kidneys must produce at least half a litre of urine per day to function properly, and his body would dehydrate quickly unless he miraculously finds his way home, a tiny dot in billions and billions of cubic kilometers of empty space, within 48 hours at most. This assumes, however, that he can be deceived into not thinking about how difficult it would be to find his way back home, or by telling him that he will receive directions from Earth via radio and then sabotaging those communications, eliminating his only way back. Number 9. Medical malpractice. A final option would be to try and medically implant into his body tumor cells that have been injected with V. It's very common for research laboratories to keep samples and cell cultures of tumoral tissue. Drugs and cancer treatments are often tested on these. Why not V? If they're human cells, it should work, and then it would be possible to create a super tumor to insert into Homelander's body. How though? If Ryan were to collaborate and feign illness, a complicit doctor could pretend, for example, that Ryan needs a blood transfusion from a compatible soup. Homelander. How do we pierce his skin for the blood draw, which would actually be the injection of the super tumor? Well, we know for sure that Homelander cuts his nails and hair and has a subcutaneous chip, so there must be a way if he cooperates. For this plan to succeed, however, it is necessary to successfully deceive Homelander and have Ryan be complicit, and then hope that the disease manages to kill him before a potential cure can be found.